that I'd like to institute into the district, which is called a micro community sort of force. And what that is, for lack of a better, not a force, but it involves community leaders, organizers, and pastors to provide input what's needed into the district. And also, I may add, that I also plan to institute a town hall meeting in each county within the district, monthly, not quarterly. That's been going missing under the previous representative, monthly.
Would that be held virtually or in person?
No, that's in person. That's in person. That's not difficult. That will be in person.
So aside from those things you're trying to accomplish, what's your platform for running for this seat for U.S. Congress?
Well, my platform, there's not one specific issue that I plan to address. A big concern of mine is voter suppression. Now, we believe that each person should have the right to vote. Now, on the other side, we all know they're increasingly making it more difficult for people to vote. Now, what we had under the last presidential administration, which I do endorse and I think is wise, particularly during the pandemic, we allowed drive-through voting. We allowed a lot of parameters that allowed the disabled and disenfranchised the right to vote. Now, I agree to allow certain things, certain parameters, eligible voters now. We're not talking about people who aren't eligible to voters. These are viable voters to vote and to make it easier.
So how would you accomplish that? Of course, Texas law is already in place and you would be a federal congressman. So what exactly would you do to allow those things to happen?
Well, there are a lot of things that we could do, and that's why I talked about allowing input from those that are in the district. Community leaders, organizers, pastors, stakeholders, provide that input. A lot of things that we can do on the federal level, a lot of things that are on the local control. That's why I think it's very important that you bring in the local assets that we already have, that quite frankly, I think they're underutilized.
Well, speaking of, what made you decide to run for U.S. Congress, not state office or local office?
Well, things that we need in the district that I think it has to be taken care of at a federal level as opposed to local level. For example, District 1, I think we can bring in resources to bring in high-tech jobs. We can look at bringing more level 1 hospitals, because I think, my recollection, we only have one, I think, in the Powell area. But I think we need to have more hospitals, in particular in the northern region, up in the Texarkana area, and down toward the Shelby County area, in the center area. But that in itself is one of the more viable things that we could do to bring this district.
So those are some very specific issues to the first district here. And the U.S. Congress is kind of focused right now on very broad nation-spanning issues, et cetera. So how do you plan to kind of cut through those big, spanning, widely discussed issues to get through your specific topics, priorities for the first district here?
Well, obviously we know, coming in as a freshman, a lot of things, you can't come with a lot of grandiose type of ideas and try to push things through. So we would carefully work through that with the existing leadership that we already have. I might add that what I did mention when I woke up this morning, a very important issue that we have not talked about, is the situation that's going on in the Ukraine. Now, I think that the United States, in conjunction with the allies, but more specifically the United States, I think we need to it would be nice if we could shore up troops, perhaps maybe 100,000 troops, put them in Poland to counteract what this bully, Mr. Putin, is doing. Because we all know if you allow a bully to take a foot, they have a mile. And he would not stop there. We know that is his intention, is to bring the old Soviet Union back together again. And I think the United States plays a very vital part is to try to combat that, showing a force, putting a force right there outside or within Poland to combat what Mr. Putin's doing now.
So you'd be in support of a military response to the invasion of Ukraine?
Pardon?
You'd be in support of a military response to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia?
Yes, I would like to see, not necessarily to say we're going to go in and start a war over there, but I do think that we need to show strength instead of putting maybe 2,000 or 3,000 forces with NATO. I think the United States needs to show a strong presence, maybe 100,000 troops, putting them right there at the door outside of Poland to counteract what Mr. Putin has already done. We know we woke up this morning. I was shocked just as well. I can't say that I was shocked because Mr. Putin has shown what he's doing. Back in the early 2008, I think he went down there in the Georgia, then in Crimea, what he's doing down there. And we all know that once he got there to the Ukraine, it wouldn't stop there. So you've got to counteract the bully. I think the United States is probably best suited than any other country to put troops right there, 100,000 troops, perhaps, not necessarily the exact number, 100,000 troops, but you've got to counteract with what he's doing.
Now, back here in East Texas, of course, it's a pretty crowded race for this particular seat, both on the GOP and Democratic side. So how do you distinguish yourself from the other Democratic challengers in this primary?
Well, I have specifically talked about being able to work on the other side. Now, I know Democrats, we have to bring in independents and moderate Republicans, and I've talked about that. And we get nowhere just preaching to the choir, Democrats to Democrats. I think we can show, we can pull in independents. We've got to win the majority independents, and I think we can win moderate Republicans. We've got to get that to show that we're not necessarily always pushing to the corner. And Republicans have done it for all too long. They go straight to their side. We as Democrats, specifically in this district, it's more of a moderate district. We have to win. We've got to address the issues that affect moderate Republicans and independents.
Well, that was my next question. I'm like, how does a Democrat win in the first that's been so long held by such a staunchly conservative congressman like
Well,
that?
I don't give up. I don't necessarily say this just because it's been a Republican district since the early 2000s consecutively. I think addressing the issues that affect all of these Texans, and we've got to appeal, go into those districts, go within the district, go into those counties, and make appeal to moderate Republicans. For too long, we have ceded that to the Republicans. Now, everybody likes safe schools. Everybody wants the ability to protect themselves. Most of them believe in the Second Amendment, but we cannot give in to what's traditionally has been rightfully or wrongfully been Republican issues. They're not Republican issues. They're East Texas issues. There are District 1 issues, and they're American issues.
So aside from the voting issue you talked about already, and of course you mentioned the micro-districting, kind of getting the different parts of the district together, what other issues are you focused on as a candidate for this race?
Well, I like to bring in more high-tech. I think I mentioned this earlier. More high-tech jobs. I think just because we're in East Texas doesn't mean that we can't bring a Google, doesn't mean that we can't bring in a Samsung, doesn't mean that we can't bring in an Apple. We've seen all of that stuff out there in Central Texas, out there in Austin. I think we can create an of course, we've got to work on the infrastructure. I think there's no reason why we can't bring in high-tech jobs, those types of companies to East Texas. So I'm prepared to look at a program to where it would be advantageous. There's some kind of tax incentives, some kind of incentive to attract those kind of businesses to East Texas.
So where can voters go to learn more about you and your policies and your priorities?
Hey, Victor D. Dunn for Congress. Victor, the number 4, Congress.com. Victor D. Dunn for Congress.com.
Mr. Dunn, thanks so much for your time this morning. Look forward to getting in the future.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Victor Dunn, candidate for U.S. House in Texas District 1. A few important dates